episode of Small Town Gospel. This is Alana. Today you will hear Alex and I interview our friend Lowell Engle. Lowell currently works at a one-year Bible school called Montana Wilderness School of the Bible, which in this episode will also be referred to as MWSB or MW. In this episode, he will talk a bit about who he is, what goes on at the school, what his role is in the school, and a few other little special treats. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome. We're here today with Lowell Engle from Montana Wilderness School of the Bible, who runs the Venture program. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's what you're supposed to say on podcasts.
It's
That's
true,
right.
yeah. If you don't mind, just telling us a little bit about yourself, a brief testimony of how the Lord saved you, who's in your family, and what your role here is.
Yeah, my childhood, I grew up in Minnesota in a happy family, middle boy of 3 boys, and I didn't start following the Lord really until I was a senior in high school. I had times before then that I appeared to follow the Lord, but my heart was far from Him, and I lived for myself and I lived for the approval of others, but was saved pretty radically. At least that's how I feel about it. The summer in between my junior and senior year of high school, and then I started, I pretty much immediately at that stage in life, you're kind of thinking about, like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I wasn't really good at anything. So I was like, well, I think I could be like a youth pastor, because they're not good.
They're not good at anything.
Like, you just have to be funny to be a youth
Right.
pastor. You don't have to actually be good at anything. You don't have to actually know anything. And which, of course, I disagree with now. But that was probably legitimately kind of my thought process. So I went to a year of Bible college right out of high school, and then realized that I was going to be in a ton of debt. So then I came out to MWSB, and I spent 2 years out here. Did the first year program, and then did the venture program after that. And in that first year program, that's when I met my wife, and we started dating when that school year was over. While I was out here for the second year program, she was back in Wisconsin working on a degree in music, and we started dating, and then I prayed her way out of college. I prayed to the Lord that she would drop out of college and she would marry me instead, and so we did.
Wow.
And then just a year and a half into our marriage, we got a call from MWSB asking if we would join their staff. So
Okay.
we were young when we picked up and uprooted a really small U-Haul and moved the few things we had out from Minnesota to Montana. So yeah.
Awesome. And what is your role here?
Yeah, my official title is the program director, which the way that I describe that I think makes the most sense is that I oversee all of the school's programs except for the main thing, which is our first year program.
Sure.
So I oversee a lot of secondary things. We have the main thing that I like to do, the main reason I work here is for the Venture program, which is 6 students that we invite out of our first year program to come back again the following year and be RAs in the dorms, have a whole nother year of curriculum, a whole nother year of discipleship, and we put them to work. Sometimes I talk about my venture students. And so yeah, that's the main thing we do. But then I also oversee all of our summer camps, I oversee, during the summers, we rent out our facilities for everything from church groups to weddings and family reunions. I oversee all of that. Every year our school goes on a week-long backpacking trip, and we do a youth retreat where we have high school kids come and hear the gospel, and I oversee all those kinds of things.
Okay.
So all the secondary events, all the secondary programs that MW has, those kind of fall into my lap.
All right.
What do you think is the primary goal of MW, whether it's first year or second year or total goal or,
Yeah, I think there's maybe two ways to answer that. I think that one of the things that sets us apart from other gap year programs is I think we have a greater emphasis on discipleship than most schools, or probably actually than any school that I've heard of.
yeah.
So I think that's maybe one way to answer that. And then one thing that we have in common with other gap year programs and other schools that are similar to us is just the centrality of the gospel. I think if you were to survey our alumni from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and anywhere in between, and say, what's the main thing that MW did for you? What did MW accomplish for you? I think that the consensus would be that I fell in love with the gospel that year.
Yeah.
People think back to their year at MWSB really fondly. You can get people to just cry on the phone just by like telling their stories and thinking about that one crazy year that they spent in the mountains.
Yeah.
But I think you can boil it all down to just a reality of their sinfulness combined with just the mind-blowing reality of God's grace. And I think that's probably why we exist.
Yeah. The word wilderness is literally in the name, and
Right.
we don't have a video feed right now, but we're just surrounded by breathtaking views, 360 degrees. What aspect of the location, way out here in the middle of nowhere, do you think makes this experience distinct?
Yeah. What aspect of the location? Probably the...
Poorly worded question.
I would say probably the limited cell phone service.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is maybe not what you first think of
Yeah.
when you think about the location. But that's a consequence of where we are, is that Verizon hasn't gotten to us yet. Which is great for my conspiracy theories. That means the government can't hear what I'm saying. And,
Here we are on the podcast.
yeah.
And here we are, ladies and gents.
Hey, big brother.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we limit the internet to our students to, it's 2 segments each day. Each of those segments is 2 hours.
Okay.
So they still get 4 hours of internet to do homework, to talk to friends, to be super productive on social media.
Yes.
So they still get internet, but it's way restricted from 24 hours a day that you would get in at a different, like, similar program that
Yeah.
might have all the same teachers that we have or similar classes or whatever.
Sure.
But the difference that our location offers us that I think is the most important is that you can disconnect
Yeah.
here from the constant bombardment that you can't really find almost anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That
Yeah.
came out in one of the student interviews last night. A gal mentioned that she's like, I don't know, I would typically just be in my room on my phone, but now I have to go make friends,
Yeah,
that
right.
kind of a thing.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool.
yeah.
What do you guys go on a week-long hiking, backpacking trip right at the beginning of the school year? What is the goal of that trip?
Yeah, there's a few goals. One of them being just what theologians would call natural revelation. So just there's something about the mountains that you look at them and the world calls it awe-inspiring or breathtaking views. And as Christians, we look at that and go, well, it's not just a good view, that's actually a statement about the Creator. So that's part of the goal in the backpacking trip. And then the other goal that we have in mind is just purely community or relationally driven. So there's just something about pooping in the woods with people that you've never met before that just makes you close.
Yep. That makes sense.
And not that we do that like as a group activity, but
what happens on the backpacking trip stays.
Yeah. There's a lot of students who come back saying that, like word for word, saying that at the end. Like, how was your trip? Oh, it was awesome, but can't tell you about it. Like, okay, I understand. I've been there. Yeah.
So I know first year isn't really your gig, but since that is, the vast majority of the students come here from 1 year, for 1 year, and then kind of go back to normal life, what kind of classes and curriculum do you cover in that first year?
Yeah, the first year program, we are Montana Wilderness School of the Bible, so I would say all of our classes are informed by the Bible, even if they aren't specifically on the Bible as their topic. But we start off the year with like a Doctrine of Scripture class, where we spend 3 weeks just looking at the Bible, going through its historical credibility, spending time looking at how you see Christ in all of Scripture, kind of an introduction to what we would call biblical theology. And then we go right from there into Old Testament survey, New Testament survey. And we have some New Testament electives in there as well, where the students just look, not in a survey format, but look specifically at 1 Timothy for 16 hours of class, which would be 1 week of class. They just spend 16 hours in a week just looking at specifically 1 Timothy. Second semester, we do more Bible classes. We also do 3 consecutive weeks on missions, missiology. We do 3 consecutive weeks on church history. And then there's more electives sprinkled in there as well. I might be missing something, but I don't think I am.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. Thank you. Yeah. And then, how are we doing on time? You have a few more minutes?
Good.
Okay. In addition to just all the kids in the classroom together, one of the things I've been struck by is how intentional it is as far as giving a pattern that hopefully the kids will follow once they go back home for discipleship. Can you kind of explain the strategy for discipleship that you guys have?
Yeah, so before the students show up for their school year, they're already broken up into what we would call community groups. It'd feel pretty similar to a normal church's small group type ministry, something like that. So they're already divided into different staff members' homes, and every student is set up in a staff member's home. The staff members who are in that group as well, the group that meets in their living rooms, those staff members are in charge of then meeting one-on-one. Roughly, the general guideline is like an hour every other week or half an hour every week.
Okay.
It can be more. It's not usually less than that, but it can certainly exceed that. So that's kind of, then those staff members are seeking out the first year students. In my ministry, second semester, I try to transition and start forcing the first year students to start seeking me out, because that's a little bit more real life.
Right.
Setting them up to, they're probably never again in their lives going to have people searching for them, going, hey, let's talk about the Lord, let's talk about class, let's talk about your life.
Right.
So during second semester, I try to transition that to prepare them and set them up for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of our discipleship. Like I was saying, I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of other schools, is how we prioritize that. That's considered a primary aspect of our jobs, not just like something that we tag on at
Right.
the end of the week, but that's when you get hired here, that's one of the main criteria that people are looking at, that our board is looking for, is for people to carry on that discipleship
Right.
ministry.
What then, how do you encourage the ventures to then come alongside and do the same? And also, like, how are you guys pouring into the venture students?
Yeah, so in the venture program, the students they have a whole nother year of being discipled. So
Okay.
similar one-on-one type ministry with the venture students. The whole year for the venture students, they have to seek me out to schedule one-on-ones. So that's a little bit different, but overall it's pretty similar. And then we don't encourage our venture students to do any real formal discipleship. We don't ask them to do that, but we totally embrace the fact that it just happens naturally. That our first year students, those who are humble and are eager to learn, are going to seek out people who are just a little bit further down the road than them, a little older, a little more mature, in theory.
We can all think of some exceptions.
Right, yeah. And so we just recognize that it happens naturally. A lot of my one-on-ones with venture students end up being about their one-on-ones with
Okay.
first-year students.
That's
So
really exciting.
yeah, and I think that's a kind of a natural aspect of discipleship when you see in the New Testament this idea of younger men meet with older men, that kind of an idea.
Yeah.
I think that's, you kind of get a feel for passing on discipleship itself as part of discipleship. So I think that's that's a natural thing.
Yeah. So for you specifically, just what are the things that you're most excited about and thankful for and encouraged by in the role that you have?
Yeah. I love having the opportunity to mold people's theology. So being able to take let me start over. I think my gift is in applying theology to real life.
Sure.
So
Okay.
taking truths in the Bible and seeing how that impacts your stress levels, and seeing how that impacts how you serve others and how you think about yourself. I think that's one of my strengths, and I really get to do a ton of that working here.
Yeah.
Is when in the one-on-one ministry, when something comes up, and in my mind I go, wow, if only you believed this verse, if you only knew this verse, this situation in your life wouldn't necessarily go away. The situation would still be there, but you would have better biblical categories or biblical handles to navigate through it.
Right.
And so I get to do that like for my job, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoy that. So part of that is then giving people, helping people get better theology, more biblical way of thinking. So that's part of that. But then also being able to not just give them theology, but then help walk them through how that changes tomorrow.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
I also really love just the culture of working here is it's really flexible. So I get to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my wife and kids, whether we're doing that at home or with and having students up for lunch twice this week. We've had students up in our house for lunch, or if we're eating dinner in the dining hall. But I get to, no matter where we're at, I get to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my family.
Wow.
We do a lot of ministry out of our home, so a lot of my work week is spent sitting with my wife, meeting with people, and I love that. I recognize that that's not how a lot of people in this line of work are blessed, but it's how MW is kind of set up.
Right.
So I really love that. Really am excited about that, and have really benefited from that. My marriage is, by the grace of God, our marriage is healthy and seems to be continually getting healthier as a result of just the way that MW's set up, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the dark side, I mean, everything about this place and your role is very unique. It's unlike almost any other ministry there is.
Yeah.
And of course, there's all sorts of upsides. But what would you say is the most difficult or discouraging, for lack of a better word, downside to it?
Are you even allowed to share this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't tell his boss.
Yeah.
Paul, if you're listening.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Yeah, I would say that the downside is the same exact thing as some of the positives. Living 100 yards from where you work can be really challenging.
Okay.
Leaning in to kiss your wife and having her push you away because somebody's at the door is like, that's not something that everybody has to go through.
Right.
Like, that's kind of and that just happens because students, our homes are literally on our property here at school. So students say, oh, I paid to be here. I have access to the gym. I have access to the dining hall. I have access to the chapel building. I have access to the library. Your home
And Lowell's living room.
yeah, your home is no different. I paid to be here.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of an entitlement thing combined with a location thing.
Sure.
That can be a challenge. And maybe to turn the focus off of the students and just onto myself, it can also be hard to disconnect from work. I can find myself, there's something about not having a commute that I can find myself silently eating dinner with my family, and Jill goes, "What are you thinking about?" I was like, "Oh, and I know a lot of jobs are like that. A lot of guys carry their work, guys and men and women carry their work with them home, but it seems extra challenging when work is 100 yards away.
Sure.
All day, every day.
Yeah.
Which is a weakness of mine, not necessarily a weakness of the students here or of even any of my coworkers, but something that I've got to continually remind myself is to make a categorical shift in my brain when I come home.
Right.
As much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one thing I've thought a lot about of if I were in your role would be if I just start to hit my stride relationally with people after a year or two.
Yeah.
And it would be really hard for me to be like, okay, bye, see you online or whatever. Is that challenging for you, or is the fact that you get to then shape new people constantly a positive or mixed bag?
Yeah. I think so. I think that that's maybe why I'm in the venture role, is that I'd get a second year.
Sure.
I think a lot of the first year students end the year not really knowing me very well, which may be partially their fault and partially my fault. Probably some shared ownership there. And then we've ended the venture year with tears and long goodbyes, and we stay in touch really well with those people in the venture program. So I think I can maybe dodge some of that challenge by just running the venture program.
Right.
I think I don't think I would have lasted very long here if I were just in charge of the first year program.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So my personality is one that really benefits from having a second year, getting to know people. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Makes sense. To end, can you share with us what you are currently reading?
Good transition.
Hey, thanks.
Your wife is a master at transition, I've learned.
Yeah.
Speaking of the hypostatic union, what's for dinner?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What am I currently reading? I am currently reading 3 books.
Okay.
Which is not normal for me. I don't want to give the impression that I'm
just really
smart.
smart.
Normally, I just do one at a time, and I hardly understand it, and then I move on to the next one. But right now I'm reading a book called Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland, which is all about Jesus being gentle and lowly of heart, as he self-describes himself.
Yeah.
See, I'm not real smart. He self-describes himself that way about himself.
Yep. That's how it goes.
And I'm reading All That Is in God by James Dolezal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a book on divine simplicity and impassibility. And I'm reading a book called Grace, Defined and Defended by Kevin DeYoung.
Just light reading.
And I'm actually, tonight, I'm actually going to start another book.
Oh, okay.
Whoa,
Wow.
scholar over here. Yeah.
Joel Beakey just came out with a tiny little 70-page booklet, you could say, on a summary little booklet on John Calvin's views on sovereignty and predestination and providence.
Okay.
So that one was that'll be just a quick read. So.
By KDY. Yeah?
No, that one's by Joel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Joel.
The books I have by him are like 2,000 pages
Right.
long.
Yeah.
So I didn't know he was capable of
I have a
writing short book.
2,000-page book that you sent me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
him.
Tried to butter you up a little. But
Yeah. It worked.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time and listening and answering a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
We really appreciate being here and being a tiny, tiny part of what's going on here. And
Yeah, you guys have been fun to have on campus. I've got some students who have said, Lowell, you need to do a podcast. And I always say, the last thing the universe needs is a podcast by me. So now they'll have one to listen to and go, oh yeah, that was awful.
If we can ever figure out how to actually get it online.
Yeah.
you heard it here first,
Yeah.
folks.
All right. Thanks.
Thank
Yeah.